Sociology opened me up to all sorts of thinkers, ideas, theories, concepts, and a whole world of reading that was amazing.
It certainly made me go on to question further and to use it as a better subject that I've never really left behind.
Quality of the lecturers was really high in Maynooth, and they're all lecturers who are contributing in their own way to different aspects of society.
It's an excellent tool for being able to give you an insight into a different way of how the world works.
I studied Sociology in Maynooth as part of the Masters in European Social Policy, and that programme ran for over a year, and it took place in both Ireland but also in the UK and in the Netherlands. So it was a really interesting Masters, and Sociology was a really big part of that. My job is really varied. It's a really interesting job. I spend a lot of time lobbying government for changes around women's rights. I work a lot on policy issues too, with employment and economic equality for women. But I suppose what's really central to our work is making sure that women's voices and the experiences, the lived experiences of women are included in all of the policy work that we're doing.
So I'm going to send this letter to Kilkenny, Amy Gilmore.
For me, a more equal society would be where women have full choices with regard to every aspect of their life, and that they're not limited in any way, whether it's through their circumstances around income, but also that it's about that the power structures in society need to change.
I studied sociology in Maynooth from 1991 until 1994. I went back as a mature student. I was 26. I'm a working class man from Rialto here in the south inner city. I'd left school when I was 15. The thing that sticks with me is the idea of critical thinking, taking things apart, asking questions, and particularly around how inequalities work in Irish society and beyond. I see it very much as an active education in that sense, because I work as a community worker now and have done either as a youth worker or a community worker for the past 20 odd years. So the knowledge, the ideas that I would have picked up in those spaces I would use in a practical way in the work that we do, both in a kind of critical analytical sense but also in a more transformative sense as well. The point is to understand the world, but it's also to change it. The area that I work in Rialto, Inchicore, Bluebell, has a very particular set of characteristics. It's fairly working class. It has lots of inequality. We've got some of the older city council flat complexes, so we've had heroin use. One of the things we learn time and again is that we work from where people are at. But there's also the other piece about where do we want to go to and where would we like to get to. Like for me, it's about having a really equal Ireland in a real sense, not in a kind of tokenistic sense.
The HSE as an organisation is an inefficiency disaster in many ways. There is certainly scope to...
I did my Leaving Cert in 1989, and when I was preparing to see what college I was going to study in, I decided to come up to Maynooth for an open day. And I think the main attraction for me at the time was the fact that sociology was being offered as a subject. I grew up being very conscious of society around me. Now, I wouldn't have worded it that way at the time, but I was certainly aware of the different types of people, people's different circumstances, and going on then to choose sociology as a subject certainly helped me realise where they had come from, why we had the society we have, the importance of social policy, whether it's through working in politics, which I have done, or also working in radio production, where really sometimes you have to give a voice to those who don't have one.
People who are being made pay for the economic...
I believe that studying sociology, making me more acutely aware of society, helped me in the career paths that I have taken.
I would have worded it differently.
I had done media studies as part of my sociology degree. So after my degree then I went on to do a master's, postgrad first in communications and a master's in communications and cultural studies. So definitely the background in sociology was something that directed me towards that.
10 years ago.
I think working in radio production or as a journalist or producer, researcher on a radio show, it's very important to have an understanding of society and be politically aware and socially aware, really, in the type of critical analysis that you would use on a daily basis.
Working in the Dáil is something that, to really understand, you just have to do. And I never really understood it until I've actually started to do this job. And I could never quite explain to anybody how unusual and how long and how difficult it actually is. Sociology, for me, has allowed me to see the world through a different lens, and I think that's the best way to put it. I grew up in Ballymun. I saw that lots of things just didn't make sense and were were wrong, and that there were things that were happening that shouldn't have been happening. And when I went to college and studied sociology, it gave me a language to describe some of the things that I was seeing and living with on a daily basis. Just bear in mind, myself and Anne were just talking earlier on, I don't have the monopoly on all knowledge, so I can't guarantee that I can give you the answer. That lens that sociology gave me is something that I use as just part of my normal life to see through and see how things are happening and why they're happening, and it gives me the language to be able to describe what's happening and ways to change or maybe make things a little bit different.
It's the deciding factor in a lot of cases about how much can you spend on the issue you're concerned about.
I began my degree in sociology in 1994. I chose it because I was a little bit curious about what exactly sociology was. I knew it had something to do with society, and as a 17-year-old, that's as much as I knew. When I read a little bit about what it was, that it was basically about having a greater insight into all aspects of how society works and the dynamics that go on within society, from within the family or the individual right through to a community or a whole country or world. I knew I wanted to know more about this because I was just really, really curious.
It wasn't being pushed by legislators. It wasn't being pushed.
The most important thing about running for election was I genuinely believed that things can be done different. I felt that, you know, the way I looked on the world or looked at the world, it was important to try and be part of this system that I'm now in, because I genuinely do believe that there are different ways of doing things, and I could see that there are different ways, and I was very much aware of the consequences of when decisions are made and how they can affect different sectors of society.
This area is known as St Michael's Estate. There's one remaining 8-storey tower. There are no residents in it now. The only remaining occupants are the Family Resource Centre Community Development Project. The land was earmarked for regeneration, apart from 2 small sections which are built by the City Council on adjacent sides of the estate. Nothing has been built on the land. Our view from the land has always been that it should have democratic and egalitarian uses, and that people have a right to the lands like this who live in the city for all sorts of uses. So we're trying to drive that agenda in a kind of very low resource context now. So we're working away and still developing at this stage. It takes a long time to change somewhere. Sociology does give you a real political education, and it gave me a real political education theoretically at that stage that I'd never been exposed to before, and sort of provided the basic building blocks of my political education, political, social, theoretical. I would advise people to do sociology because it can broaden your intellectual horizons. It has a huge value politically in terms of understanding how our society works and other societies. I think it really is a good experience to do it. It's an eye-opener.
What I would hope for sociology students in Maynooth is to combine their academic work with some practical experience about how inequalities and how the structures in society work to produce those inequalities. I think it's really important in terms of when you're studying to try and combine it with some of the practical work, so to see the lived experience of inequality, and then how to bring some of the theories, a structural approach to the work. That's really important.
Having that understanding of society, how you can research, again, the critical analysis that one would do in relation to how Ireland operates as it does, or our attitudes towards people or different cultures or different races. It really is a wonderful foundation for anybody who's going out into the workplace.
I genuinely do believe that when I'm looking at issues within society, or even within my own life, never mind beyond that the time that I spent studying sociology is with me all the time. And I don't mean that in any pretentious way. I mean that as in that it does make me see the world in a different way. And my only disappointment is that not everybody gets to see the world in that way. And if they did, maybe we'd have a different world.